Well, Shabbat Shalom. I want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. This is Barbara, and I'm serving as your host today. And today is the 8th day of the 9th month, and it's the first Sabbath. And we just want to welcome all our family and friends of Yah that have gathered here today by the telephone or internet, and maybe you're listening to the recording. We just want to welcome you too. And we invite everyone to go over to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. It is a great source of information about the Creator's Sabbath. You'll see many articles, videos. There's just much there, all based on Scripture, showing the Creator's calendar in the heavens. And also on the events page, if you scroll down to the bottom, if you're listening to the recording, you'd like to join us for fellowship, it will show you the dates and the times and the connection links to connect with us every Sabbath or New Moon Day. So today we're ready to start our discussion about the original timekeeping system. And today we have Sister Ruth with us. And she is going to be explaining more about the Father's calendar and a way we can use it practically in our life also. So Ruth, thank you for coming on today and being our guest.
You are welcome. I would like to say a little bit before I actually start talking about this calendar. I'm a visual learner. I don't know about anyone else, but I am a visual learner. I can look at a picture, spend a bit of time looking at it, and glean a lot of information. Now, I'll admit, I also learn a lot from auditory, learning when someone's speaking to me, and then I combine the two. But visual and auditory are really the main ways that we actually learn things, and for me to look at a picture just helps me to clarify what the words are. So I understand that those of you who are just on a telephone call and don't get to see the picture, I'm going to do my best to try to explain to you what's on the screen. Bear with me, and if you've got questions, I'm going to try to talk slow enough. And before I go to the next frame or picture, I'll try to answer questions if you have any. But I believe that the more we look at the Gregorian calendar, day after day after day, the harder it is for us to understand when Scripture speaks to us about days, months, years, weeks, any time frame at all when it speaks about numbers. And it's sort of like learning a second language. It doesn't mean you forget your native tongue. It just means that you're able to understand and comprehend a second language. And so it sort of makes you bilingual. And especially when we're studying Scripture, I believe that when we are looking at a visual calendar and can get a grasp of how those numbers and days are arranged, and then when we read the Scripture, we're able to, in our mind, format the calendar as we're reading it in the Scripture. And we don't have to use a Gregorian calendar. We can make our own calendar. You could take a piece of typing paper, draw 6 rows of 7 different squares, and this is what I did for years. I just made my own calendar and went to a printer and had it duplicated, and then I filled in the numbers, and I didn't overlay it on top of a Gregorian calendar. I just looked at it while I was studying Scripture. So what I'm going to present to you is a very simple, when you look at what's on the screen right now, it's a very, very simplistic way to keep track of days, weeks, and months. But I believe that holy men used to be very detailed and very articulate about the way that they determined Sabbath days, work days, and new moon days, because I believe that that they understood that the Father cared deeply that his people would understand, easily be able to comprehend and know visually, whether looking in the sky or looking at a piece of paper, that visually his people would know what he is speaking about when he gave his word. So, are you able, Barbie, to go on ahead and show the package? The package.
Sure.
Good. So this is what I bought. It's called a Perpetual calendar. I've noticed that they're everywhere. You'll see that it's got numbers in it. It already has made months. It's already predetermined for you. And in the package, there were 31 separate small pieces numbered 1 through 31. And there are 12 separate long pieces, and each one of them have the Gregorian month listed on it. I didn't use those months. What I did, I turned those pieces of months over. So, Barbie, you can go ahead to picture number 1.
Okay. I was afraid this might happen. Okay.
Okay, so what I did, I arranged those numbers, and I only used numbers 1 through 30. And you'll notice that on the number 1, if you can read it, on the number 1, it does say new moon. And I also put the words new moon on the number 30. So that in number 8, 15, 22, and 29, I wrote the word Sabbath. So this is the basic calendar that I perceive and I believe is the Creator's calendar. Anyone have any questions? So far, it's going to be very difficult to speak about what it looks like to those on the telephone, but basically what it is 6 different rows. The very first row has a number 1 at the far right block, which would be the 7th position. And 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th row of numbers have number 2 through 8. The 3rd row has 9 through 15. The next row has 16 through 22, and the 5th row has 23 through 29. And on the very bottom of the calendar that I've made is the number 30, and it's also in the far right position.
Question.
Yes.
Ruth, this is Dan from California. I'm kind of wondering if maybe labeling the 30th day as the new moon could be, in some people's minds, a little confusing, since that would indicate that there are 2 new moons in 1 month. I'm just wondering if maybe some sort of transition day for the 30th day might be a better terminology to use.
That's fine, and these numbers slide. These numbers are not fixed. These are little pieces of cardboard that literally slide into this wooden area. You could take it completely off the rack, so you don't even see it. Really, all you would see during those moon phases, when there's only 1 day for the new moon, you can take the number 30 off completely. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that if it's but if it's a 30-day month and you're not showing the 30th day, then people are going to be wondering.
And you can even put the 30 up on the left side of the number 1. Me personally, I actually don't even concern myself with how many days there, how many hours actually, not days, but how long it takes for the new moon to complete its cycle. I just rest and wait, and at the first sign of the sliver, then I know it's time that I can start moving and shaking and working. That's me. But this is a calendar, the way this looks. Correct me if I'm wrong, Barbie. I believe that this is the way Troy Miller was originally intending it. I've seen some calendars where the 30 is up position next to the 1, which shows the transition from the previous month, that if there is a 2-day new moon, then the 30th is part of the previous month, and the 1 now starts the new month.
Yeah, I think that's what I heard Brother Dan saying, was maybe 30 shouldn't say new moon on it because there's one new moon day, and 30 is part of the old and part of the new. Maybe he was just saying don't label that day. That's what I think he was suggesting.
Okay. Well, I apologize. I misunderstood that. Sounds good to me. I'm flexible. This is a work in progress. So any suggestions, because I'm encouraging people to mainly create a visual calendar to look at when they're studying Scripture.
Uh-huh. And for those of you on the phone, if you just put right in a row 1, 8, 15, 22, 29, and 30, you'll be looking at the calendar we're looking at on the phone. Only we have the work days in there too. I mean, the ones what we're looking at on the computer. If you just make a row of the 1, 8, 15, 22, and 29, you'll see on your paper what we're looking at on the screen.
I think it's important to make a visual, so that's why when I saw this, I was very pleased. I bought a few of them. I thought I would have to use a second package, open it up to use the numbers, but I found that I was able to kind of cut and paste and recreate from the pieces that were in the package. Anyone else have a question? Good.
And I'm a visual learner too. I have to see, in fact, I write notes and I draw pictures in my notes. That's how I learn. So if I see this calendar in front of me, like on my desk or something every day, which I do have, that really helps, Ruth. So, anybody else have a question or comment?
This is Susan in Arkansas, and I, too, am highly visual. I'm saying, oh, Lord, please don't let me go blind. I don't know how I'd make it. But anyway, I'm highly visual, and this will help me a lot. And, I think I'll make the things like you did at first, because that would work for me. So bless you. I think that's wonderful, and thank you for it. The question I have is, I have heard months called this or months called that. Are there any original month names, or are they all, I don't know what the names are called.
Well, I'll start to answer that. Barbie might be able to enhance my answer, but I always use numbers, but I do admit that Moses did use a name for a month, but I personally believe that was him relating to people who had just come out of Egypt and understood that language, and in order for them to maybe connect what they'd understood about calendation. But I personally still use numbers. I don't give names, even though there might be a name in the Scriptures. Mm-hmm. Barbie?
When we study the paganism of all the names, January to August are named after pagan gods, but actually September, I believe, stands for 7, October for 8, November for 9, and December for Deci for 10. And those are still some of the way back there original calendar months that are standing for the original numbers. December would have been 10, but anyways, but we know there's 12 months in a year, but they understood those as numbers, but we don't.
Yeah. Well, and Moses made mention of Nisan, or, you know, I just, and there are several other times that words are mentioned, but I still keep numbers. And Barbie, you can go to the next picture, picture number 2, slide number 2, because maybe that'll help her to see what I've done. So here is the second thing that I did. And if it helps, Barbie, scoot it, make it big enough so you can't see the number 30. For those who...
Yeah. And for those of you, I'll put it in the recording link where you can get one of these, like Susan was saying she would like one. So we'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah, yeah. So in the package, when I got the 12 months in the package, I turned them over, and I used them, and I wrote on one of them, I'm not sure if it was January or what it was, which month it was, I just wrote the words new moon of this year. You can get any kind of cardboard, make it the way you want to. You could write new moon of the year. I left it the new moon of this year because I would like somehow, some way to take on the challenge, and it definitely would be a challenge, to somehow numerically count and figure out when Jubilees and sabbatical years are. I'm not real sure who or how I would begin that adventure, but I know that from creation, years are counted because I believe in a young earth, and I believe in that, you know, that we are in a year from creation, but I haven't quite ventured into calculating and figuring what year we are in. So, and so Barbie, you can go on to picture number 3. So what I did with the small number, what I did actually, I cut up a second long block, which might have been February. I turned it around, it was white on the back, and I took one of those single numbers and used it as a template, and I cut up 13 blocks. And I numbered them, and so you can see I did first, second, third, ... to the 13th, and I had numbers. So for this new moon of this year, I put the number 9. The 9th new moon is where we are at right now. And you can see below, there was on the 1st, we had the new moon. Today we are on the 8th. And so anyone have any questions on that?
So that's good. For those of you that can't see, that's on the phone, so of course you'd put in front of the new moon which month. And what she's saying is she made her numbers for the each month, and then she'd just put them on there for that month. So we're in the 9th month, and maybe some of our brothers and sisters in the phone are in the 8th month. But we're on the 9th month, and there's a little card you can put in there, and she made a number 10, so next month it would say 10.
And then each new moon, all you really need to change on the calendar is the number. Unless we come to a month that has feast days, and then I'm going to show you what I will do on those. And this sort of reminds me of when a crazy thought came to me a couple days ago. When children are counting down the number of days till Christmas, they kind of get excited to go to the calendar and change the numbers and flip them around and all of that. So you can be creative and you can duplicate a lot of those ideas to get children involved into, you know, setting up the new calendar for that new moon cycle. Okay.
That's interesting. And okay. And I'm flipping it over. Which one do we go to? 4?
Yes, please.
And I was just going to say, I was on a conference call a few years back, a very good study, but every day he announced what day of the month it was. And that really helped to start out my day knowing I was on the 9th or the 10th. I mean, I know it. I have it written on my planner. But really, it helps to have a visual or an announcement of what calendar date we are on, because we are different in the world.
Mm-hmm. So with this picture, I want to show you what I have done here. Like, again, I've used some of the long blocks, turned them over, the months, turned them over, wrote on them, and wrote on some of the number blocks to show what you would have for the first new moon of this year. Would be, I always, on the first, I always read and reread and remind myself of Exodus 12, where it speaks, where the Father speaks to Moses and tells him that today is the first day of the new moon for you. And I emphasize the words for you, because these words for me have a lot of meaning. And this new moon is the beginning of new moons for you. It is the first new moon of the year for you. I believe these two words, for you, separate me from everyone, even those who are listening to me speaking now. That when I read Scripture, and if anyone were to disregard this whole lunar craziness or even keeping Sabbath, I'm reminded of those words, for you. That the Father separated us. He separated out a peculiar people for himself, and that I'm branded for him, and when he speaks to me, he speaks to me. And those words, for you, in Exodus 12:2, stick out to me. So I put them on the number 1 of the first new moon for this year. And then we have a Sabbath on the 8th, and then I'm reminded on the 10th of the first new moon, the Father told his people to choose a perfect lamb. And that they were to keep that lamb, and on the 14th, they were to kill the lamb to eat, and on the 15th through the 22nd, they were to keep the Pesach, or to keep the matzah, celebrate unleavened bread. So that is what my calendar looks like, and it will be looking like when we get ready to celebrate unleavened. Any questions?
I really have a comment about that, making that so personal, Exodus 12:2, that it's for me, it's for you, it's an individual thing, that this is the new month, the new year for you. I really liked that. Thank you.
I think Moses had to hear it. I hope the people heard it, but I personally believe by repeating those words to myself, that it keeps me upward bound. It keeps me focused on the Father and the words He has for me. And they may not be words that anyone else, I mean, we're all in this, heading hopefully the same direction, serving the same God. However, there might be things that the Father has to say to me that He wouldn't have to say to anyone else, because they already got it in their brain years ago, but it took me a little longer, and I'm a little slower, and I didn't pick it up. So He's speaking to me on one level and others on another level, not meaning that I'm on a higher level or anyone else is on a higher level. It's just that my life of 70 years have taken me through an adventure that no one else has gone through. And the Father has been with me, either leading me or I've been running away from Him, one or the other. Either way, He speaks to me, and when I read those words in Exodus 12:2, I'm reminded that His words are for me.
Yes.
Okay, Barbie, if you're ready for picture number 5.
Okay.
So we just looked at the first new moon of the year. Going forward on the second and third new moons had no significant holy days in them, but the fourth new moon does. And in the fourth new moon we see that the 29th day on that particular Sabbath, the fourth Sabbath of the month, is Shavuot. Now some people start the day before and go the third day, but Barbie and I both believe, I've read the scripture, it does not clarify how long you have to celebrate it, but it does seem to be just one day. Anything you want to add to that, Barbie?
Well, I believe I do one day also, but I know when they went up to Jerusalem, they probably stayed for the week like they did for the other feast. But for me, it's a one-day feast, but it seems like it should be longer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess we can consider that, but I don't know. What does anybody else have to say? And maybe some of you on the call see Shavuot also in the spring, but we have studied it to see it in the middle of the calendar at the summertime. In the middle, when you look at the calendar, it's placed exactly in the center between Passover and the fall feast.
Mm-hmm. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's Abby here. I'm here in San Jose, California right now. I'd like to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, Abby. Go ahead.
It seems like at least 3 days because, you have the last Sabbath and then you have the new moon. Usually it's 2 days on that month. I don't know, but it seems to me that my record shows it's always almost like 2 days on that month, but it could be wrong.
Well, Abby, when Barbie was, excuse me, Abby, I'll let you talk again. When Barbie was talking about it being one day, immediately, I don't know why I thought of it. Maybe it's because it's the next Gregorian holiday that's coming up is Thanksgiving. We celebrate Thanksgiving on one day, but it seems that the families and people travel and stay for 4.
Uh-huh.
So even though the one day is identified, or 2 or 3, it's a 4-day spread. Most people, especially if they're traveling home, doing a long distance drive or a long distance flight, they stay for 4 days. So, but it's one day. Thanksgiving is one day on the calendar, but most people block it off for 4-day celebration. So Abby, from where do you seem to get your understanding, what Scripture would lead you to believe it's more than one day.
Oh, yeah, I agree. It's only one day, that day of Pentecost, but it's like a 1 week celebration for me. It's more like me. Yeah.
Well, I would say the next day is New Moon Day, because so we already know that we're having 2 days in a row there at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then some months it might be the 28th or 29th from what I understand, but as far as I know it's always been on the last Sabbath of the 4th month. But this is more to learn.
Okay, then Barbie, we'll go on to picture number 6 if we're ready to move on. So, skipping from 4th to the 7th new moon, in the 7th new moon we see on the first day is Teruah, blowing of the shofar. And then on the 9th and the 10th day of that 7th month is Yom Kippur. Beginning on the 15th on that Sabbath, the second Sabbath of the 7th month, and going through to the third Sabbath, you see the days are earmarked for Sukkot.
Yeah, for those of you that can't see the screen, instead of using the printed out numbers that come with this set, which I'm going to tell you about how to get at the end of this program, she has written on the back the numbers in red: Teruah for day 1, Yom Kippurim 9 and 10, and then she's written on the back of 15, on the back of one of them, or a card, red 15 for Sukkot, and then day 2 is the 16th, and she's written on all the days of Sukkot. So those days are not the regular black typewritten numbers. They're written out by hand as special on the calendar.
And, you know, as you're explaining that, Barbie, I just can't help, I had in my mind the vision of a child. Each new moon, setting up that calendar, and a little child, how just making that each month, each new moon, how just making it would be planting seed to know and be able to identify in the future as that child gets older how the new moon phases affect, and how you set up a creator's calendar each moon.
Yeah, it's a good teaching tool for adults, grandmas and grandpas and children.
Yeah, especially those of us who are visual, just setting it up and touching it each at the beginning of during each new moon, those hours while we're spending keeping new moon, to be able to touch it and set it up and plant it. It's like planting it over and over, kind of like rote memory in our brain each new moon. Any questions?
Yeah, Ruth, if I can make a comment briefly here.
Yeah.
Please forgive me if I sometimes seem a little bit too technical, but for me it does matter. Yom Teruah is not the 9th and the 10th. Yom Kippur is not the 9th and the 10th. Yom Kippur is only on the 10th. And the 9th you may want to label as the evening start of the fast, which takes place for 24 hours. But Yom Kippur proper is only on the 10th.
Yes, you're right. I marked the 9th with the word Yom, and all it says is day. But I know that it's a reminder for me to be preparing. And yeah, I can, like I said, each of you can make your personal calendar, personalize it how best would. When I got this, these little cards don't have a lot of wiggle room. There's not a lot of room to write on them. That's why it might work better to make your own. So there was not a whole lot of room to write anything on them. And you can see how the 9 and the 10, they're positioned down into a sliding little piece of wood. Anything written on the bottom of the numbers is just not going to show. So, yes.
And I'm thinking about, oops,
Go ahead.
Sorry, interrupting again.
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking about Susan and all those that are so visual. This wooden plaque has those slats in it like you would see at church that we used to see up at the front of the church.
Oh, yeah.
And it had those little slats where you'd slide in the hymnal number for beginning hymn, then you'd slide in the slats, the number 302 for the ending hymn, and it's just like that, where you slide the numbers in between the slats. It's pretty simple, but yeah, it's a great visual help for us. I just thought maybe that little thought that came to my mind would help those on the phone know what we're doing.
Yeah, and not only that, with the hymn numbers, didn't they show how much money you took in last week and how much money you took in for the month?
Sometimes I think it depends on your church.
I know the Baptists did it. Okay, moving right along. Picture number 7.
Hey, can I make a comment? It's Abby again.
Do we need to go back?
Do
we need to go back one more, Abby?
No.
Okay.
I just want to thank Brother Dan for making that comment, because to me it's confirmation, because I heard it from a Lunar Sabbath keeper who is an ex-pastor of a Seventh-day Adventist, and he was saying that the Yom Kippur is really just that one day, and the 9th is really just a preparation day. And I was like, because I was not really thinking about that much, and I thought that, wow, that's interesting. That's the first time I heard it. And then Brother Dan is making that comment. It's like a confirmation, you know. So it's first time this year I actually just, you know, like Day of Atonement is just that 10th day, and it's the night before or the day before is a preparation day. So thank you so much for making that comment. So be it.
Well, and I agree, Abby, I agree with Dan. When you read the scripture, it's very clear. The Father commanded that the Feast of Atonement would be on the 10th, and that you would begin to afflict your soul the evening of the 9th. And forgive me, Brother Dan, but I still do not use 24-hour day. I believe when Yeshua said, are there not 12 hours in the day? But I know that there are nighttime hours. However, to me, the Feast of Atonement does begin in the evening of the 9th, as Scripture clarifies, and however long it takes. And there are various definitions when you say between the evenings, but some people interpret that between sundown on the 9th and up to sundown on the 10th, and that's between the evenings. I've heard many definitions of what it means between the evenings, and I'm sure that'd be another day, another discussion. But Abby and Dan, I agree that the Yom Kippur is on the 10th, and the evening of the 9th is when we begin to afflict our soul. No matter how you define afflicting your soul, it begins the evening of the 9th. Okay. So this is the calendar that I used, and I'm looking at that right now. Barbie has graciously covered up the 30th, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
It doesn't
we don't
confuse.
have it this month.
Yes, correct. That
Yeah.
you know, when I was sending these pictures to you, Barbie, I was
Yeah.
taking them off and putting them on and sending them one at a time and taking
Yeah.
notes. So anyway, I hope I didn't confuse too many people with the visual, but there you are. This is the 9th new moon of this year for you.
Yeah. And we do have a 30th day. I'm planning on going to my daughter's, and I had to tell her I can't plan anything Monday or Wednesday because Wednesday will be New Moon Day, and it's kind of a touchy situation with us. I mean, she loves me and all that, but every time this subject comes up, there's a little raw area there, so it's kind of hard. But so on this calendar, it does show we will have a 30th day in the 9th month. Yes, we will.
Yes. So when we transition from the 9th new moon to the 10th new moon, there will be a little bit longer period to get us out of the new moon phase and onto the second day. Good. All righty. I think I'm finished.
Now, can we go back to the calendar and you can explain to people, and I can also attach that information with the recording link, or at least a picture of this.
Yeah, and if they can take a picture of it and blow it up, all you have to do is find that barcode. And I did buy these calendars at Target. Now, I typically don't go to Target. I was taking a friend. But they had these. They were only $5, but I was very impressed with it because most Perpetual types of calendars have already marked the days of the week and don't really have the flexibility that this one particular did. So, which even if you got a Perpetual calendar that already had the days Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you could paint over it, mark over it, do whatever you wanted to. So, okay,
so all right, so thank you for telling us where we can get one, and we're not promoting that place or that calendar. We're just saying you could get one that's already made. And I think somebody had some questions. Sarah, did you have some questions, or does anybody else? But Sarah first put in the chat box, I have a question about the 13th day, and it can wait until the end. I think she was talking about during Passover week.
Oh, the 13th during Passover week, or was the 13th maybe?
I'm not. I'm not.
It was an error. I'm sorry. It's the 13th month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Barbie, you can explain that, but you know, some use 13th month.
Yeah, this was a little confusing up here, but we knew what it meant. When she put these numbers up here, 1, 2, 3, they would have been showing you how you can make cards for each month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 12. And that 13th card you would only use every couple or 3 years. You might have to use it when there's a 13th month. Correct. So you could even put, which I'm thinking next year will probably be, but that's what it's about. And I wondered when you had that question in there if you had seen that and was wondering about that. But that's what that's about. She was showing how to make your own cards for the month, and we have month 9 right now.
Right, but my question is, when you were talking about you mentioned some think this is the 8th month, and we think it's the 9th. What is the difference? And then the fact of having a 13th month, how will we know? I mean, if we is the moon going to indicate that, or are we off every few years, 30 whole days, 29 whole days? Can you cover that a little bit?
Well, there's other people on the call that might want to explain it too. I'll try to explain it a little bit. Well, with the 29 and a half days, every 2 to 3 years, we have to catch up to stay within the seasons. Or like the Muslim calendar, they never make an allowance for that extra month every 2 or 3 years. Because our calendar was dented in 700 BC, making a 29.5-day month. And Brother Dan, if you're still on the call, or Ruth, would you like to explain a little bit why we sometimes have a 13th month? Or anybody that would like to pitch in here.
I would like
and go ahead, Abby. Go ahead, Abby.
It's just very simple. It's actually every 3 years, exactly. We are actually 10 days behind every year with the moon. So every 3 years, it amounts to 30 days. So exactly every 3 years, if you make an observation and if you write it down, which I did, it's exactly 30 days. And every 3 years, we have 13th month. So it's very simple. So if you just want to start doing it, whatever month you want to start with the new moon, and observe that for the 3 years, you will find out. So every 3 years, you have a 13th month. And I don't know what else how I could explain that, but it's that simple.
So you said every 33 years? 3 years?
Every 3 years.
Oh. Well, aren't we taking care of that by adding the 30th day every once in a while? It evidently doesn't, huh?
No, because that number 30 that I had on the calendar, that only depicts the cycles when the new moon phase lasts a little longer than 24 hours.
Okay.
So what she was explaining was that the 13th month, there's an adjustment every 3rd year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but because in the Jewish thinking, their calendar is 28 days, and we don't count the new moon phase. But if you'll think about it, on the Gregorian calendar, they add a day every 4th year, correct, for leap year.
Uh-huh.
But most of their months, all of their months are 30 days, and some are 31. So they've actually done some calibration as they go along. And so at the end of 4 years, they add a full day, and it's called leap year, but they've kind of added a few days on those months when they have 30 and 31 days. They've already added a few days. I suppose, and I haven't done it, but I suppose if you added up in 3 years how many Gregorian month calendars have 30 days and or 31 days, you might end up with that 13th month.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not real privy on a lot of it, and Dan may do a better job of explaining it.
Well, thank you, Abby and Ruth and Sarah, for your question. Did anybody else have a comment?
This is Susan, and I'm not sure if I have it right, but I think that El Sheba counted this last year as a 13th month year.
Yeah, we'll be next year. In the spring, we'll be going 1 month longer. So from what I can foresee at this point and the signs that we had last year and things, but I think at this point we'll close the recording. It is the 3 o'clock hour here. And then maybe some would like to talk after the recording is off. I want to invite everybody to come back next week. Will be November 11 at the same time that you were here today. And I thank you so much, Ruth. That was just interesting, and it was so good to go over the Father's calendar the new moons, the Sabbaths, and all the feast days. It was just a wonderful review. So thank you so much.
I'd like to say something before you turn the recording off. It says in this family population, it's page, part of the page after Malachi, and it says...
You're breaking up really bad, Wanda. I think you're breaking up from what I can hear.
Okay, I'll go different place. Can you hear me better now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. In this big family Bible I have, it's after Malachi, it's like a third of the page, it says Jewish calendar. It says the civil year from which the Jews computed their jubilees, dated all contracts, and noted the birth of children in the reigns of kings. The ecclesiastical or sacred year from which the festivals were computed, this mode of reckoning is the one generally adopted by the sacred writers. The following table shows the correspondence of both the civil and sacred calendars with our own. And like it says, Nisan or Abib is corresponds with the March, April, and on. It gets on 12 months. The Hebrew months, being lunar ones of 29 and 30 days each, their year was 11 days shorter than ours, and therefore the several divisions of each could not precisely coincide. This deficiency of 11 days was compensated for by adding a 13th month every 3 years. The supplementary month they called VE-Adar, capital A-D-A-R. And so it goes on, tells a little bit time, and it tells that their seed time was middle of October to middle of December. Winter was middle of December to middle of February. The cold was middle of February to middle of April. Harvest was middle of April to middle of June. Their summer was middle of June to middle of August. And heat was middle of August to middle of October. In the beginning of our year, therefore, we find ourselves advanced about a fortnight into the Jewish season of winter. So I thought that was interesting what it said on the page.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Wanda. And that's a whole other study about why we sometimes have a 13th month. And I thank you all for your comments and questions. So I'm going to close the recording.
And also,